Alaric smoothly jumped backward to create distance between himself and Seth. The Inferno Fury Spear veered abruptly as a forceful kick struck its shaft, colliding with the airborne Dragon Sparrow sword. A thunderous explosion followed, unleashing a radiant burst of light. Both weapons recoiled into the hands of their respective wielders, signifying a temporary stalemate. "Alaric, you missed an opportunity," Seth said, now wielding the Dragon Sparrow sword. "If you had pressed your attack, I might not have emerged unscathed. Your reluctance reveals a fear of injury and accident sits your weakness." As people aged, the fear of death often heightened. In Seth's view, Alaric, secluded for years, had lost the essence of a true warrior despite his profound cultivation. With his spear pointed diagonally, Alaric retorted, "Killing you is easy without unnecessary risks." "Is that so? Then show me the might of a chief guildmaster of Dragon Guard." Swiftly initiating an attack, Seth aimed to end the confrontation. He was aware that prolonged engagement would only complicate matters. Alaric's sudden appearance was an unexpected twist in the unfolding events. It hinted that the skilled experts of the Dragon Guard were likely on their way there, hastening to join the escalating fight. Sensing the imminent threat of being surrounded, Seth recognized the urgency for a swift end to the battle, even if it meant facing potential grave injuries. He was determined to press Alaric into a retreat. "You're overestimating your abilities," Alaric scoffed, confronting Seth's sword head-on, his spear poised for a counterattack. One. The clash between these two exceptional warriors erupted into a dynamic and strategic confrontation. Alaric was a master of spear techniques, displaying a commanding skill that unleashed a whirlwind of strikes. His moves seamlessly combined thrusts, parries, and piercing maneuvers with unpredictable finesse. His immense strength and expert spear skills made him seem like a divine force in human form and unstoppable power. In contrast, Seth's swordsmanship was sharp and agile. He tactically used his nimbleness to dodge Alaric's potent attacks. Even though Alaric held a higher rank on the astonishing world list, it wasn't solely based on individual cultivation levels. Other factors like techniques, weapons, special moves, and hidden arts played crucial roles. Courage, determination, and sheer willpower were also important in determining these rankings. When Seth and Alaric faced off against each other, their true strength shone through in the face of challenges. The key to victory lay in their wholehearted determination and willingness to give their all. Even though Seth's skills were not as advanced as Alaric's, his readiness to sacrifice himself made up for any shortcomings. So, as they clashed on the mountain summit, the outcome remained uncertain until the very end. The intense battle between these two strong opponents continued relentlessly. At the foot of the mountain, the battle between Dustin and Nestor had reached its climax. Even though they were going at it fiercely and seemed evenly matched, they were both running on fumes and were on the edge of exhaustion. With his adamantine shield, Nestor managed to catch his breath and escaped major injuries. On the other hand, Dustin, fueled by a combination of potent pills and unyielding determination, had pushed his body to its limits. The intense battle had brought them to a critical point. If they kept at it, one of them might not make it out alive, and the other would be seriously hurt. "Go to hell," Dustin shouted, making a last, desperate move. He thrust the celestial blade toward Nestor's chest. A thunderous sound resonated as a colossal golden bell descended from the sky, enveloping Nestor. The celestial blade struck the bell, scattering sparks, but failed to breach its defenses. Inside the bell, Nestor smirked. "Logan, it's no doubt that you pushed me to my limits, but sorry to say, you still can't finish me. How does it feel?" "Angry, frustrated. Just like 10 years ago when you had to watch your friends and loved ones get slaughtered. Kieran, you're nothing but a joke now." As Nestor burst into mocking and brazen laughter, he remained oblivious to the crimson glow that had consumed Dustin's eyes. "Go to hell." Nestor's arrogance ignited fury in Dustin's eyes, his blood boiling. In response, Dustin threw caution to the wind, using a forbiddance technique. Explosions echoed as bloody holes erupted across Dustin's body instantly, drenching him in his blood. The secret ruse technique enhanced a person as strength but came with severe consequences, especially when used under physical exhaustion. It would worsen a person's condition, and a slight miscalculation could lead to self-destruction. It was clear that Dustin was going all out. Have you lost your mind? Do you want to drag us both into the abyss of death? Nestor, who had been arrogant just moments ago, now looked scared. The secret ruse technique was a desperate last move, sacrificing themselves to defeat an enemy. It was a risky move that only someone really determined to die would try. Nestor now regretted getting on Dustin's nerves earlier. If he had delayed a bit longer, Dustin would have worn himself out to the point of demise. If I'm going down, you're coming with me. Dustin grinned menacingly. His eyes were now a deep shade of red. Terrifying energy surged from every part of his body. The celestial blade in Dustin's hand began to vibrate wildly. Waves of ferocious sword energy relentlessly pounded against Nestor's protective golden bell shield. The force grew stronger, and the onslaught became more intense. Cracks started to appear on the seemingly indestructible shield, under the relentless assault of the celestial blade. Seeing that, Nestor panicked. He urgently infused his entire body with spiritual energy, attempting to reinforce the golden bell shield. He knew that if he couldn't endure Dustin's final attack, he might end up seriously hurt or worse. On the flip side, if he held his ground, Dustin would be done for. Nestor attempted to fortify the shield, but the cracks kept spreading, refusing to mend. In just moments, the once solid shield resembled a web of fine fractures. He let out a frustrated roar. Veins popped on his face, and his limbs shook uncontrollably. Quick, help him! Sensing the urgency of the situation, Anders, who was watching from a distance, immediately called for help from nearby warriors. Let's see who's brave enough to make a move. Abigail stood in their way and raised a vial of poison in the air. She warned, "Step forward, and I'll turn you into a bloody mess." Her threat made everyone think twice, freezing them in their tracks. The fear of Abigail's poison kept them from doing anything rash. Dustin roared. With a powerful shove forward, a loud explosion followed. Nestor's golden bell shield finally broke, and he was sent flying. Dustin's celestial blade went straight for Nestor's chest, but instead of the expected fatal blow, it felt like hitting steel. The blade couldn't pierce him, but the powerful energy still sent Nestor flying, crashing into the rocks. He coughed up blood, looking beaten and pale. At that moment, the crowd noticed Nestor was wearing a gold-shade armor. Even though the armor had shattered, it saved Nestor's life by blocking Dustin's deadly strike. Nestor, coughing up blood, struggled to get up. The toughness gained from practicing the Iron Fist technique, and the damaged gold-shade armor clearly made a difference. Without them, Dustin's sword strike could have been deadly. Though he narrowly avoided death, he was badly hurt, and the chances of winning looked slim. Nestor, meet your end. Dustin, not giving up, pressed his sword again. But as he moved, his legs gave out, and he had to use his sword as a crutch to stay balanced. The last sword attack really took it out of Dustin, and now he could hardly move. The aftermath of using the secret ruse technique hit him hard. He could barely even lift a finger, let alone go after his opponent. Seeing this, Nestor went from being surprised to bursting into laughter. "Logan, I overestimated you. Looks like you're totally drained. Can't even stand up, can't you?" Dustin clenched his teeth, trying to steady himself bit by bit. Nestor laughed manically. The secret ruse technique might be strong, but it has serious consequences. I bet you're pretty much drained now. Even if I don't do anything, you won't be able to keep going for much longer, Nestor said with a sly grin. Despite Nestor's serious injuries, he was in better shape than Dustin. Right then, Dustin found himself stuck with no way out. Anders and the others were waiting to claim Dustin's head once the battle on the mountain summit ended. Humph, don't celebrate too soon. I'm still here. Abigail threatened sternly. Drop the act, kid. You're hurt, and there's not much poison left in your hands. We've got tens of thousands of soldiers here. No matter how good you are, how many can you take down? Nestor smirked. If I were you, I'd retreat now. Once the Dragon Guard's warriors show up, running won't help. Abigail, you go first. Dustin clutched his sword with one hand, holding himself up and trying not to fall. Sir, like I said, we will face death together. Abigail was fearless and stood firm. All right, if you guys really want to die, I'll make it happen. Nestor slowly lifted his hand, signaling his troops. Soldiers, listen up. Take them out. Anyone thinking about chickening out will deal with serious military consequences. With that command, the soldiers' doubts went out the window, and they charged ahead. Military orders were absolute. Even if it meant facing certain death, they had to follow through. Suddenly, a white sword dropped from the sky, cutting through the heart of the battlefield. When it landed, a powerful wave of energy shot out, sending hundreds of soldiers flying. Bodies scattered in every direction, their cries of pain echoing through the air. Who the heck is this? Nestor squinted, looking up. A good-looking young guy, shirtless, descended gracefully. It was Glenn, the Sword Union's ambassador. Haha, Mr. Hadley, right on time. Logan is on his last legs. Hurry up and finish him. From now on, you'll be the top talent in Dragonmarsh. Nestor, seeing Glenn, wasn't surprised but happy. After all, the Sword Union had always served the Dragon Guard. Great, another strong ally. Anders was excited. Glenn was stronger than the other four princes, and his natural talent matched Logan's, with such a sword genius present. The overall situation was now certain. Sir, this guy is unpredictable. I don't think I can defeat him. What should I do? Abigail's expression turned serious. Go now. I'll try to hold him off with shaky hands. Dustin pulled out a tablet from his pocket and popped it into his mouth. He hoped to use his last bit of strength to give Abigail a chance to escape. Mr. Hadley, don't hesitate. Deal with Logan quickly so we can finally end this nightmare, Nestor urged. Stop talking, Glenn replied, furrowing his brows slightly. He then swiftly swung his sword, cleanly beheading Nestor. Suddenly, a flash of a sword appeared, swiftly piercing Nestor's neck without any warning. It all happened so fast that no one had a chance to register what had happened. Nestor stood there, frozen as if he had turned to stone. His eyes widened with shock and disbelief as he stared at Glenn, who was standing not far away. It was hard for him to believe that Glenn, their supposed ally, would betray him like this. There was no apparent grudge or issue between them, at least not that Nestor knew of. Was it because of something he said that angered Glenn, leading to this deadly outcome? A thud echoed as Nestor's head fell heavily to the ground. Even in death, his wide eyes reflected the surprise of his unexpected end, just when he thought he had narrowly escaped from. Dustin's grasp and that victory was near. Glenn's swing of his sword changed everything. Fate was truly unpredictable. What just happened? Mr. Wilkins, is he dead? Seeing Nestor's sudden death left everyone bewildered. They were hopeful when Glenn showed up, thinking he was here to help. But now it had turned into a shocking tragedy. In the palace, Nestor was a top contender and the 10th on the astonishing world list. His death, caused by a lone sword, left a mysterious and eerie feeling. How could this happen? Anders was terrified, his head buzzing with confusion. Nestor, a powerful figure in the palace and a member of the Dragon Guard, had both strength and support. Yet, with one swift motion, Glenn beheaded him. Was he mad? Sir, did I see it right? Did that guy just kill Nestor? Abigail almost dropped her poison vial, utterly confused. She couldn't understand what was happening. Weren't they supposed to be allies? Why were they turning on each other? Was there some deep hatred between them? Yeah, you're right. Nestor is indeed dead. Dustin nodded stiffly, feeling a mix of emotions. He wasn't acquainted with Glenn. and there didn't appear to be any apparent reason for Glenn to step in. Dustin couldn't fathom why Glenn would offer his assistance. "Glenn, have you lost your mind?" Anders burst out in anger. Mr. Wilkins was a palace official and part of the Dragon Guard. "How could you kill him? Do you understand the seriousness of the crime you just committed? Even if you're a Sword Union disciple, you won't get away with this." "Stop blabbering," Glenn said with a straight face. He lifted his sword and swung it at Anders. A bright white sword energy burst out, stretching over 30 feet. It was like a curved moon, slicing through the air at Anders. Anders quickly lifted his sword to defend himself. There was a loud clash, and his sword was cleanly cut through. Anders was sent flying back, crashing into the crowd. He coughed up blood, looking pale as a ghost, struggling to stand. Anders narrowly dodged an attack that could have ended his life. What? The crowd was shocked again. If Glenn slaying Nestor was seen as a sneaky move, this last attack was pure dominance. It surprised everyone when Anders, one of Oakvale's four princes and known as the God of War, couldn't even block Glenn's attack. This stark difference in their strength revealed that Glenn, the seemingly unassuming disciple of the Sword Union, was actually the most powerful among Oakvale's four princes. "My sword doesn't care about a nobody. Just scram," Glenn said calmly. His words echoed through the mountain. Some commanders hesitated, stuck between moving forward or stepping back. Dealing with Abigail was tough, and now Glenn's sudden betrayal made things even trickier. The chance of winning seemed to vanish, yet they couldn't just retreat. Military orders bound them, and leaving now would lead to trouble. Not leaving, then prepare for death. Glenn lifted his sword again, cutting through the air without hesitation. A powerful sword energy burst forth, carrying a terrifying force, and mercilessly sliced through the crowd. Blood splattered, and cries of pain filled the air as Glenn's single strike made a vacuum, leaving behind a gruesome scene of severed bodies. In an instant, Glenn took 1,000 lives with one stroke, showing his frightening strength. Scram! Glenn's deep growl filled the air, and a scary vibe surrounded him. Suddenly, strong winds kicked up, tossing debris around and making it tough for everyone to keep their eyes open. "Run! Everyone run!" The 8 commanders were completely scared, yelling orders and leading their groups to scatter in confusion. They had a feeling that staying would mean destruction, even if they faced consequences later. It seemed better than risking their lives on the spot. After Nestor's death and Glenn's display of power, the tens of thousands of remaining soldiers sensed the threat. They abandoned their armor and weapons, fleeing in panic. Thank you." Abigail managed a tight smile, showing her appreciation to Glenn. Glenn remained silent, glancing back at Dustin, and calmly suggested, "Let's go quickly. The Dragon Guard's warriors are almost here." Dustin looked puzzled. "Why are you helping me? Do you not know who I am?" Glenn raised an eyebrow. "I know who you are, but I don't get why you'd take the risk to save me," Dustin replied. "Your mom, Alba, is my aunt," Glenn revealed. "What aunt?" Dustin's face tensed. What was going on? Was this person his cousin? Could it be? Was it really that coincidental? "So, you're my cousin?" Dustin cautiously asked. "Yes," Glenn nodded. What? Dustin was momentarily at a loss for words. He hadn't expected this connection with Glenn. The lingering question, why hadn't his mom shared this info before? It seemed like she had kept it a secret. Sensing Dustin's confusion, Glenn explained. "And Alba had a conflict with the family years ago, so she chose to leave and cut ties. After she passed away, my mom and I went to West Lucosia to pay our respects and told your dad who we were. But it seems he didn't mention it to you." "I haven't been back in 10 years, Dustin said with a complicated expression. The revelation about his mom's past explained why she hadn't returned to her home. He decided that once everything was sorted out, he would visit and pay his respects to her as well. Trying to change the subject, Glenn said suddenly, "Your sword is impressive. Can I have it?" Dustin, taken aback, asked, "What?" "It looks like a no," Glenn said casually. "Well then, let's find a chance to have a fight. If you lose, the sword is mine. If you win, my sword is yours." Dustin was left speechless. The sudden shift from family talk to suggesting a fight was confusing. "Don't worry. I won't take advantage of your state now. Once you recover, we can have our match," Glenn assured sincerely. Throughout their talk, Glenn couldn't take his eyes off the celestial blade in Dustin's hands. Being a sword lover, he considered a great sword akin to unmatched beauty. He believed that the more swords he owned, the stronger he became. His admiration for a splendid sword was hard to hide. This situation mirrored Glenn's previous encounter with Seth, driven by the allure of Seth's dragon sparrow sword. Unfortunately, Glenn hadn't had a chance to spar with him yet. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the top of Quandary Mountain. After the earth-shaking noise, a bunch of rocks rolled down from the summit. Luckily, the troops of the 8 sovereigns had pulled back, avoiding serious injuries. The 3 of them glanced up at the commotion. On the mountain peak, a spear clashed with a sword. The Inferno Fury spear glowed red, coloring half the sky, while the Dragon Sparrow sword shimmered with a golden light, holding its own. A spear and a sword danced skillfully, their golden and red glows weaving intricate patterns. The 2 fighters moved with precision, almost fading away in the midst of their exchange. Glenn muttered, "Seems like they're close to figuring out who's winning." This was a duel between the world's top-tier warriors. Once it was over, things were going to shake up, be it in the government or the martial world. If Alaric won, the West Lucosian monarchy would go down, and there wouldn't be anyone left to challenge the Dragon Guard. If Seth came out on top, the Dragon Guard would lose its main support, and the whole monarchy would go into chaos. So it wasn't just about honor. It was like deciding the fate of the whole world. "Sir, who do you think will win?" Abigail cautiously inquired. "It's hard to say. They're both evenly matched. Nobody can predict the winner until the very end," Dustin replied seriously. "But Uncle Seth still has a trump card he hasn't played. That might turn the tide in his favor." "A trump card? What is it?" she asked curiously. "I haven't seen it. I just heard Uncle Seth talk about it once," he said, shaking his head. Abigail quietly prayed, "I hope Uncle Seth wins." At the top of the mountain, Alaric stood with the Inferno Fury spear, his hair messy and his eyes glowing red. Terrifying waves of energy continuously surged from within him. The force was so intense that even the Inferno Fury spear started to bend slightly, its tip vibrating wildly. On the other side, Seth, holding the Dragon Sparrow sword, was surrounded by a bright golden light, blending perfectly with the sword. Both of them went all out, starting the final fight. They understood that whoever lost now would definitely face ultimate defeat. The spear and sword collided incessantly, unleashing concentric waves of colorful light. It concealed destructive power potent enough to kill powerful grandmother martial artists. After struggling intensely for about 3 minutes, Alaric's Inferno Fury spear slowly gained ground, pushing back Seth's Dragon Sparrow sword. It was clear that Alaric had the upper hand in personal cultivation. "Seth, you're tougher than I thought, but in the end, you're just not my match." Alaric sneered with a triumphant smile. He continued, "Your energy will run out eventually, weakening with each strike. Unlike you, I'm different. I can draw the vital force from the earth within Oakvale, replenishing myself in every battle. So I don't worry about getting weaker. I actually grow stronger. That's the difference between us. Even Orion from Sacred Rhyme Summit couldn't outlast me." As the leader of the Dragon Guard, Alaric had spent years in seclusion, cultivating a resonance with the vital force. Even from 100 miles away, he could absorb the vital force's essence. It wasn't an exaggeration. Within Oakvale, he was unbeatable. Sure, you might have the edge in cultivation, but there's one area where you fall short, Seth declared coldly. "And what is that?" Alaric didn't seem interested. "I'm ready to risk it all. And you're not," Seth said. With those words, he suddenly closed his eyes, and his body trembled violently. Then, something strange happened. An illusory image of Seth slowly separated from his body. This image looked exactly like him, but unlike a human form, it resembled some kind of ethereal soul state. It was elusive and mysterious. Astral projection. Alaric's face turned pale when he saw that, and his grip on the spear started to shake. He knew better than anyone how terrifying astral projection could be. It exceeded the capabilities of ultimate grandmasters, a unique technique of terrestrial immortals. In his whole life, he'd only seen it once by Orion from the Sacred Rime Summit. The issue was that Orion stood out as an unmatched figure, the absolute best in the world. Also, he was the only terrestrial immortal in Dragonmarsh to date. Even though Seth was impressive, comparing him to Orion was out of the question. How can this be? How can you perform astral projection? No, this is impossible. Alaric freaked out, his inner confusion going wild, and fear rushed through him. Only the peerless experts of the terrestrial immortal realm understood the art of astral projection. He wondered how Seth, who appeared to be less powerful, could possess knowledge of these mysterious and supernatural methods. What was really going on here? At that moment, Alaric felt a mix of shock, confusion, and sheer panic. He couldn't figure out how Seth mastered astral projection, but one thing was clear: it was a bad omen. This technique bypassed physical defenses, energy barriers, and all forms of protection and struck directly at the soul. It was a force that defied resistance and left no room for defense. Apart from Orion, no one else in the world could withstand such a formidable assault. As Seth's spirit projected, blood started oozing from his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. His skin even cracked, showing how much this technique took a toll on him. For a person to employ such an extreme measure before attaining the realm of terrestrial immortality would inevitably result in irreversible damage. This explained why Seth had only resorted to this desperate move at the 11th hour. Alaric, your unilateral decisions causing harm to the innocent today. I'll be the one to guide you to the afterlife. Seth's projected astral floated toward Alaric. As it advanced, the turbulent waves of energy dissipated. The Dragon Sparrow sword and the Inferno Fury spear stopped shaking, just hanging there in the air. Everything around them, the dust, the fallen leaves, even the breeze froze. It felt like time had stopped. No, stop. Alaric screamed inwardly. He struggled to break free but found himself completely paralyzed. His limbs, eyes, ears, mouth, and nose, everything was beyond his control. He could only watch as Seth's astral form approached, slowly pushing him into an abyss. The fear of death quickly took hold, and he fought desperately to break free, but his efforts were in vain. Profound despair quickly engulfed Alaric as he questioned whether that day would mark his end. After all, he had been the chosen one, the inheritor of Vital Force, the supreme ruler of Dragonmarsh. With his vast fortune and influence, only he could have shaped the destiny of Dragonmarsh. How could someone of his stature have met his demise? No, he believed he couldn't die now. He was supposed to live a long life, creating more glory and becoming the ruler of the world. In Alaric's mind, a desperate roar echoed incessantly. But in reality, he couldn't even blink his eyes. Break! As Seth's astral drew near, he extended his sword finger, gently tapping Alaric's forehead. In the next moment, Alaric's entire being began to distort. Inside him, a white soul shadow struggled frantically, emitting a silent howl. It was clear that Alaric's illusory image was rapidly fading, becoming transparent. If this continued, it would completely dissipate in less than 3 counts. Once the soul vanished, Alaric's physical body would naturally turn into a corpse. Just as Alaric was about to be exterminated, a black arrow carrying immense power shot out from behind, hitting Seth square in the back. It was Caesar launching a surprise attack. There was a muffled explosion upon impact, and Seth's body violently shook. The astral projection that had just occurred recoiled, back into his body like a lightning strike. After the astral returned, Seth spat out a mouthful of blood, his face turning pale. He looked completely drained, as if all the energy had been sucked out of him. At that moment, Alaric screamed in pain as he staggered backward. Sweat poured down his face, and his body trembled uncontrollably. Despite narrowly avoiding death, Alaric couldn't shake off the pain lingering in his soul. The fear and despair felt impossible to shake off as they kept tormenting him. "Mr. Draken, are you okay?" Caesar hurried to Alaric's side, standing protectively. "I'm alive. I made it." Alaric gawked in disbelief. He could not believe that he had escaped certain death when he witnessed Seth's astral projection. He believed that he was the chosen one, after all. "Mr. Draken, I sensed trouble and acted fast, so I shot an arrow and got Seth injured. Thankfully, it saved you just in time," Caesar boasted. Hearing this, Alaric glanced at Seth, who looked weak. Seth was bleeding from 7 orifices and struggling to stand. At that moment, Alaric felt a mix of surprise and relief. He let out a triumphant laugh. "Ha ha ha, well done. From now on, you're an elder in the Dragon Guard." "Thank you, Chief Guildmaster," Caesar said with a bright smile, nodding. "Seth, bet you didn't see that one coming." Alaric studied Seth's weakened form with a proud expression. "You're impressive, I have to admit. I couldn't even counter that move, but you still missed the mark." Seth said nothing. He coughed violently, and his whole body shook uncontrollably. "Despicable," Frost sighed from a distance, looking displeased. If not for Caesar's sneak attack, Seth would have surely won. After all, battles between such powerful beings should be transparent, based on strength alone. Caesar's interference disrupted what could have been a historic duel, leaving the Dragon Guard with no honor. "Seth, you're on your last legs. Surrender now or face ruthless death," Caesar warned. Though the surprise attack succeeded moments ago, Caesar still hesitated to act rashly. He knew a powerhouse like Seth remained a threat as long as he was still alive. "Seth, I don't get how you pulled off that astral projection, but I'm sure it drained you. You're probably running out of fumes now." Alaric squinted. "I should have finished you earlier. Maybe this is just how things were meant to be." Seth glanced at the sky and let out a sigh. Despite giving his all, he felt just short of killing the traitor and freeing the citizens from harm. The sudden twist of fate indicated that he wasn't the true hero he had hoped to become. "HMPH, I'm the chosen one, and challenging me means defying destiny." "You don't stand a chance," Alaric boasted arrogantly. "The chosen one?" Seth scoffed. "Alaric, your prowess comes from the protection of vital force. After all, you're just an opportunist." "Theft, vital force chose me. I am the supreme ruler. People like you will forever be subservient to me," Alaric boasted. "Alaric, you're way too full of yourself," Seth shot back. With that, he slowly stood up and straightened himself.